lesson.
Second 15 minutes.
And you want to know why we're like 50 lessons behind Florence's class. Did you start it again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just can I explain it better?
No, that was awesome. Okay, moving on. No. Afterwards. Yes, go ahead.
Were you serious or the handheld?
No.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Is that very much? No, they don't do that. Please don't just let Michelle explain.
The horses, they harvest a very similar kind of way, except they use that long tube thing.
Yeah, they don't actually do.
No, but they exactly. Okay, I'm moving on here. Okay. All right. Darwin's finches, also an example of adaptive radiation or divergent evolution. Remember, adaptive radiation and divergent evolution are the same thing. Two alternative terms for the same process. So there are at least 13, depends on which source you look at, 13 or 14 different species of finches on the Galapagos Islands. Some are even a different genus. Okay? And they all fill different niches on different islands. So again, one came over from the mainland. There was or a few of them did. There was variation between the individuals. Some thrived on certain islands, others didn't thrive and became extinct. And as a result, these 13 different species have evolved. Adaptive radiation or divergent evolution. In other words, common ancestor, a number of different species. You've got to remember that. That's terribly important. Okay. Right, just ignore this on the PowerPoint. It's to remind me to do that on the second PowerPoint. Okay, moving on to the second PowerPoint. I'm listening.
If there was a species that evolved and then a whole lot of other species evolved from that single species, is it possible that that original species
still exists? It is possible, it's not that likely.
It's not that common. So
but it does happen. I mean, reptiles can exist.
Yeah.
But not that they're a species. Obviously, they're
So that usually that original individual species dies out.
Yes. But we'll talk about patterns of evolution in PowerPoint too.
How many PowerPoints are there? 17.
Not quite.
I think there's 5.
Yeah. There we go.
Look, Stephen's getting excited, yes.
Stephen, are you sad you didn't do bio?
You're very sad now. Considering about horses and...
You would have loved reproduction.
Wait, you don't do bio? How long have you been away?
You just have
Okay. And boy, he's never had so much fun in his life. Okay.
Your life is sad then.
Okay, let's go. So I'm going to keep going back to talk about Darwin, to talk about various things that we've done so far. So hopefully this particular PowerPoint will go quite quickly. So Darwin's theory of evolution was theory of evolution by natural selection. Or he said it was descent with modification, and I'll explain that. Darwin was influenced, his ideas were influenced by a guy called Malthus, don't obsess. He had a whole lot of thoughts on populations. He believed that in the majority of populations there were more individuals than there were resources. And so there was competition to be able to survive. And that is one of the whole basis of the way that Darwin thinks about it. And then also what he observed on his voyage on the Beagle. Okay, so Malthus published work that stated that in nature the growth of population always exceeds food supply, the growth of food supply resulting in continual states of hunger and disease. This made Darwin think. He considered that some individuals in a population would have features that would better equip them to survive, like Michelle and William being able to reach the food on the top shelf at Pick and Pay. Those that didn't possess those features would die out, leaving the fitter and this word fitter is used a lot. It doesn't mean somebody who can run a long race and not puff and pant at the end. It means that they're best fit to survive in a particular environment. So the fitter individuals would reproduce and would result in a new species. And this was referred to as evolution by natural selection, but that's not what Malthus named it. He just said there were more individuals than could survive. I'm listening?
But, correct me if I'm wrong, but like people, okay, currently now, because of modern medicine, it's not only the fittest that survive. So we've kind of like set to evolution, like, boom, and then like we'll be like this forever, is what.
So we'll stop it.
Yeah, you see, because humans are so able to manipulate things,
Yeah.
and because of technology,
Yeah.
we've really ruined it.
Mm-hmm.
Ruined it.
So orange is
We can still breathe and figure out.
That is crazy, Josh.
yeah.
Why do you think so, Kiana?
Because it's like a lot more of like the things that are like problems now could have been solved by like them just not existing in the first place. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, so you're agreeing with Josh?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, so this is a bad example, but like HIV. So if we hadn't developed antiretrovirals, all of those people with HIV and AIDS would have died a lot sooner, and there'd be like a lot smaller proportion of people with HIV.
Wait, so with the coronavirus, like, must we just take them all and then just die?
I don't think it
You know
works
they
that
did
way.
that in China. There was some other disease. So they put every single person who had that disease on a bus, and they just like took them off the edge of a cliff, and they just like died.
Don't like Kim Jong-un do that or something?
Okay, right. Moving on. Otherwise, we're never going to finish all 10 of these. Okay. So he finally, Darwin, 1858, published his work together with Alfred Wallace. So remember, they published a paper before Darwin published his big book. Okay. And remember that Wallace had independently come to the same conclusions about evolution as Darwin. His theory was developed over a period of time by 1856, and it was based on these 4 main points. And this you have to know. There's variation between individuals in most populations. Remember, the individuals in a population are the same species. Remember your definition of a population. Organisms of the same species living together in the same environment in proximity such that they're able to interbreed. Okay. So, if you look here are 2 different examples. This one is the same species of a kind of butterfly, maybe a kind of moth, I don't know. And these 2 are exactly the same species. The one is just a melanistic form of the other, and if you look carefully, you can see the spots under the black coat there. But they're the same species as each other. So, his theory, first point, variation between the individuals in most populations. William is taller than I am. Some of that variation is inherited. So it's controlled by genes rather than by the environment. So my width being greater than William's is controlled by the environment. My genes, his height being greater than mine, is controlled by genes. So this family you can see very similar to each other, and you know who these 2 are.
No. Like, is that Elvis Presley or something?
Yes, ma'am, I know that.
Josh?
I'll let you go ahead.
John Lennon and his son Julian.
Oh,
He isn't wearing the glasses.
Not
How
really
are we supposed to know?
Yeah. I thought it was something.
So if Trish comes into my class without her glasses, I'll go, who are you? Get out.
No, but it's like
No.
so long ago.
It doesn't look
We
like
don't know.
Okay, moving on. I'm listening.
Ma'am, like in like the Inca Mountains somewhere, like their lung capacity is like a bit better because of the altitude. But like, how does that happen? Like, do babies just like get born and then like their lung capacity is like automatically better?
So there are some differences that are merely made by the environment. So any of you who do athletics know that it's better to go and train at high altitudes because then more red blood cells are formed.
That's why Kenyans are so good at running.
One of the reasons. But if that same person goes from Durban and then goes and lives at Kilimanjaro, they will make more red blood cells. But if they go back down and live in Durban, they're not going to have that need. They'll lose them. So that's not an inherited thing.
Oh, because like back in history, like.
I get with the lung thing. The lung thing is inherited.
Oh.
Yeah, but it is possible for those changes to not be inherited.
But like, is it possible for like an environmental change, like to become a genetic change? I don't know if that makes sense.
An environmental change to cause a genetic change.
Yes.
So the whole thing is, it's not that the environmental change causes the genetic change. It's that there's variation between individuals.
Okay.
If the environment does change, some of those individuals are better able to cope with that new environment. They will survive, they will live for longer, they will be able to do more of the humpy-pumpy. Don't say that in a test or exam. They'll be able to have more offspring and pass their genes on to more of the following generation. And that's what evolution by natural selection is all about. Okay, got it. Okay. So some of that variation is inherited, so it's controlled by genes rather than by the environment. Populations tend to produce more offspring than the environment can support, and therefore individuals struggle to survive because there's always a shortage of food and space, etc. And there you can see a whole lot of wildebeest. And this is his fourth point, so you have to know this. Those individuals whose traits best suit them to survive in the environment will be healthier because they'll get more food. Okay? They will survive for longer and therefore leave more offspring. So obviously in here is the humpy-pumpy thing. Leave more offspring than those with less suitable traits. And if the variation is inherited, then more individuals in the next generation will have those traits. Okay, happy?
No. Okay, please can you do it? Just 2 seconds.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I've lost half my class. Yes, I'm just. Oh, you're just waving.
Actually, do animals know that they're not the same species as other animals?
No. No. So horses and donkeys will mate with each other and produce mules. But mules are infertile. But horses and donkeys don't know that they're not the same species. In many ways, they might recognize that they're different species because they won't recognize each other's courtship procedures.
They won't recognize what?
Each other's courtship procedures. So spider's courtship procedure is a male spider goes and catches a fly, wraps it with silk, brings it to the female. If some oak arrived at your doorstep with a fly wrapped in silk and said, please let's go and make babies, you wouldn't recognize that as a good. No, you want red roses and a box of chocolates because that's what you recognize.
Why is it like a cheetah trying to make love with the
Because there aren't enough of them. Cheetah. Why are they inbreeding? So they're not enough. The whole thing is South Africa's ruined the environment. People have ruined the environment. Cheetah are few and far between. They don't meet up with that many cheetah that they can choose. There are only 2 guys you can take to a chick dance. You can only take one of those 2. Okay. Right, alright. Off you go, guys. Please do not write the words
End
happy
of
country
second of our, yeah.